Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm your host Ian, and today we're diving into a topic that's been shaping Canadian housing for decades: rent control. If you're a renter, a landlord, or just someone interested in how our economy and real estate markets tick, this one's for you. We'll cover the economic fallout from the controls back in the 1970s, how they pit tenants against landlords in the wallet wars, what's happening with rent rules right now across the country, that big exemption for buildings after 2018, and the ongoing debates on whether rent control helps or hurts. Let's get into it. First off, let's rewind to the 1970s when rent control really took hold in Canada. Back then, inflation was raging. Think double-digit rates, and housing costs were spiking. Provinces like Ontario and British Columbia stepped in to try and cool things down. In Ontario, the Residential Premises Rent Review Act kicked in 1975, capping increases at around 8% initially, and it evolved into a more structured rules by 1979. Over in BC, the NDP government brought in controls in 1974, limiting hikes to 8% even as inflation hit over 11%. And they appointed a rentalsman to oversee everything. The idea was to protect folks from getting priced out during tough economic times, building on wartime controls from the 1940s that had lingered in some places. But the economic effects, they weren't all sunshine. In BC, before the 1970s rent controls, rental construction was booming, adding about 2,000 units a year in Vancouver alone from the 1950s to the early 70s. Once controls hit, that dried up fast. Investors saw the caps on rents as a risk, especially with rising costs for maintenance in buildings. By the 1980s, new purpose-built rentals plummeted and folks started shifting to condos instead, which weren't under the same rules. A University of Toronto study looked at Canada from 1975 to 1988, found that these controls cut new rental builds, hurt the quality of existing stock, and created shortages. In Ontario, the controls slowed construction too, leading to higher market rents for anyone not locked into a controlled unit. Basically, while some tenants got stable, lower rents, the overall supply tightened, making it harder for new renters to find affordable spots. It created this two-tier system: lucky insiders with cheap rents and outsiders facing scarcity and higher prices. Then there's the maintenance. Landlords squeezed on income sometimes let buildings slide, leading to deteriorating quality over time. It's a classic case of good intentions clashing with market realities. That brings us to the core tension: tenant versus landlord economics under these rent controls. From the tenant side, it's about affordability and stability. Controls cap how much your rent can jump each year, giving you predictability, especially crucial if you're a fixed income or in a high cost city like Toronto or Vancouver. It protects against sudden hikes that could force you out. And studies show it can reduce inequality by keeping housing costs down for lower income folks. In places with strong controls, tenants might stay longer, building community roots without fear of eviction or over rent disputes. But flip that to the landlord and their perspective, it's a different story. Rent caps mean your revenue is limited, even as costs for taxes, utilities, repairs, or mortgages climb. This can eat into profits, making it less appealing to invest in rental properties or even maintain them properly. Why sink money into upgrades if you can't recoup it through higher rents? Economically, landlords might convert rentals to condos or other uses to escape these rules, shrinking the rental pool. And for small landlords, maybe folks renting out a basement suite, these rules can turn a side income into a headache, leading some to pull out of the market altogether. It's not just about greed, it's basic math. If returns don't cover risks, capital flows elsewhere, like stocks or commercial real estate. Ultimately, this tug of war means tenants win short-term security, but landlords being disincentivized can lead to long-term supply issues that hurt everyone, including future renters. Now let's talk about where we stand today with rent controls across Canada. It's a bit of a patchwork. Each province and territory does its own thing since housing is provincial. 5 provinces have some form of control: British Columbia, Manitoba, Ontario, Quebec, and PEI. The rest, Alberta, Saskatchewan, New Brunswick, although they just added some in 2025. And then there's Newfoundland and Labrador and Nova Scotia, and the territories. You'll mostly let the market decide, with no caps or increases. In BC, increases are tied to inflation, with a max set yearly. You need 12 months between hikes and 3 months notice. Manitoba caps at 2, but for smaller buildings, landlords can reset rents on vacancy. Ontario's guideline for 2026 is 2.1% based on CPI, with a 2.5% cap to avoid spikes. Quebec has its own system through the Tribunal Administratif du Logement, where increases are suggested based on costs, but tenants can challenge them. PEI limits hikes to around inflation levels. In places without controls like Alberta, landlords just need to give notice, 3 months for a month-to-month, and can raise as much as they want after a year. But even in controlled provinces, there are loopholes like vacancy decontrol, where rents reset to market on turnover, which can lead to big jumps. Overall, these rules aim to balance affordability with investment, reflecting local politics and economies. Speaking of Ontario specifically, there's this key change. Buildings first occupied after November 15th, 2018 are exempt from rent controls. Why? The Ford government brought it in to boost new construction. The thinking was if developers know they can charge market rents without caps, they'll build more rentals to meet demand. Before that, in 2017, the Liberals had expanded controls to all units, but Ford reversed it for new ones to encourage supply. So what does this mean? For tenants in these newer spots, rents can go up as much as the landlord wants each year, with just 90 days notice after the first year. That could mean steeper hikes, more insecurity, and potentially getting priced out faster. On the flip side, it might lead to more buildings getting built, though critics say it hasn't supercharged construction as hoped yet, and it just creates a divide between old and new units. In Toronto, for example, rents in uncontrolled units influence the whole market, pushing averages up. It's meant to fix supply shortages, but some argue it erodes protection over time as more exempt units come online. Finally, the big debates for and against rent control. On the pro side, advocates say it's essential for tenant protection in hot markets, keeping rents stable, preventing gouging, and helping low-income houses stay housed. Modern second-generation controls, which allow some increases tied to inflation, don't tank supply like old-school hard caps did, according to studies from Canada and abroad. Plus, with housing as a human right, controls ensure stability without relying solely on market forces that favor the wealthy. On the other side, critics, include many economists, argue it distorts markets, discouraging new builds, leading to shortages, and causing poor upkeep for the current units. A Fraser Institute piece says renters end up losing out long term because controlled tenants stay put, reducing mobility and options for others. It can hit small landlords hard, and evidence from places like San Francisco show controls cut supply by 15%. In Canada, opponents point to the 1970s slowdown as proof, saying better solutions are zoning reforms or subsidies to boost supply without price meddling. The debate boils down to short-term relief versus long-term growth. Does control help more than it hinders? Wrapping this up, rent controls a complex piece in Canadian history and economics. From the 1970s crunches to today's exemptions, it's all about balancing tenant needs with landlord incentives and overall supply. Thanks for joining me today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop your thoughts below. Do you think rent controls help or hinder real estate in our economy today? Thanks for watching. See you again soon.